Well, welcome everybody. My name's Bill Brown, and I am one of the co-executive directors for Prison Yoga Project. And I'm going to be joined today by another one of our co-executive directors, Nicole Hellthatler. Nicole, if you'd like to say hello. Awesome. Yeah, and thanks for joining us for the workshop today, Nicole, and those of you who are watching. The title of this workshop is Mindful Embodiment, Somatic Solutions for Stress and Vicarious Trauma. And, I am almost certain that most of the people watching, you're very familiar with stress. You're familiar with the way the autonomic nervous system works, that we have a stress response, that we have a relaxation response. Most likely you're familiar with trauma and concepts of trauma. And you're probably also familiar with vicarious trauma. But one of the things that we want to do with this workshop is to emphasize the need for incorporating the body into stress management and managing and recognizing signs of vicarious trauma. So rather than just listening to me present, I thought I'd invite one of my colleagues in to help discuss this a little bit. Nicole, from your perspective, why is it so important that we bring the body into stress management, managing vicarious trauma, managing trauma?
Thank you for this question and allowing for me to answer it and share with other folks. My nervous system is currently being regulated by my cat Cookie in the corner. Feels appropriate to address her. This is the same topic that I try to introduce to folks that I serve here in Little Rock, Arkansas that are incarcerated. Because they are in a program where they're getting multiple classes on stress management, parenting, budgeting. They are intellectually understanding the steps that they need to take to leave their incarceration and live the life that they want and fulfill their lives, right? And so, what I often say to them is, y'all are doing this incredible work and you're understanding these concepts intellectually. And what we're here to do with yoga is to feel these concepts in our body. And so that's the start, right? That's the introduction to why we should do yoga. And the reason I keep going and explain is because our body is so smart and our body remembers all of the things that we've been through. And so we can understand that we want to approach the world in a self-regulated way. But if we cannot sync that feeling up with our body, then we can understand these concepts over and over again, but we won't put them into practice until we know what these concepts feel like in our body. And that normally syncs and lands with them. And then it's something that we go ahead and practice. And so that is how I explain it to folks that I serve, but how I also understand it is I know that in order to learn, to create memories, to build friendships, I need to feel safe. And if I don't physically feel safe in my body, those things aren't going to happen in the way that I want them to. And so that is why it's so critical that we start off with the body, and feeling perfect is not the goal, right? It's okay to feel the hard things and the stiffness and fear, but to be in touch and know what place I'm starting from and where I hope to be is so critical in living the life that we want to live and feeling transformation.
Yeah, yeah. I think I see this again and again where, these concepts are introduced from a cognitive perspective, but then there aren't a lot of chances to practice and to notice how it feels in our body. And one of the things when I'm introducing this to my the folks in my classes, and I love it when I've got new people in my program and I get to give this talk, this spiel about how our stress response really is intimately connected with our body. I mean, when we experience a sense of unsafety, the type of unsafety that starts to take cognitive processes offline, what's happening is cortisol in our body is blocking that cognitive process. And the amygdala, the part of our brain that registers a sense of threat, a sense of safety or unsafety, is communicating directly with the body to invoke a physical response to a situation that may or may not be threatening. But we don't have time to think it out. we're going to act. We're going to act first prior to trying to reason out whether or not the situation is safe for us.
Something that I like to remind the folks that I serve, but also myself, is my body has protected me my whole life, and it's an act of protection. Most people that are incarcerated, and people in general, they know they've experienced trauma, right? You don't have to tell them that, and you often don't have to tell somebody that it's likely still affecting them. They can understand that. But what that reframing of your body has worked your whole life to protect you and get you here. And so what we're doing now is working with it to say this mechanism is important, but it doesn't need to be turned on all the time. And it's almost giving someone freedom back for them to be able to know when to turn that switch on and off of, I'm okay here. I can sleep. I can be among people. And for memories, I don't have to be looking over my shoulder. Physically, that means I won't have adrenaline pumping through my body and cortisol. But just recognizing that your body served a purpose. It just doesn't have to be in that state all the time.
Yeah, yeah. The there's something in there that you said that that I think is really important. I believe this whole process starts with recognizing, and this is where the mindful embodiment aspect of this comes in. This word mindfulness, paying attention to something on purpose without judgment. We really start this practice with an awareness of the state that our body is in. So often we're dissociated from that state. We don't even recognize that we may be in a state of activation. And so we start by bringing awareness, like, am I noticing muscular tension? Am I noticing an elevated heart rate? Am I noticing a flush to my face? And then we're able to cultivate that embodied awareness that in the moment is going to let us know when we're activated or on the way to becoming activated in a way that we flip our lid, right? And so it's not about necessarily mindfulness, meditation. These things are not necessarily about feeling good. They are about feeling what is. And this is where the without judgment aspect of it comes in. There's no right or wrong in what you're experiencing. When you become aware of what you're experiencing, hopefully then you're able to apply some tools to change your state.
Yeah, especially because if you're living in a constant state of stress, you may not realize it. That just might be the norm for you. And so sometimes it's helpful for it to be pointed out to you. Let your shoulders relax because your
Yeah.
natural stance might be one of protection of your body. And so just having those reminders and that awareness of what your current pattern is that you feel like your body takes on to get you from day to day, that pattern can change. And that's why it's so important to know the body so we can address it and maybe do things different to eventually go through the hard feelings to then feel good,
Yeah.
probably, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
goal.
yeah, yeah. Ultimately, the goal may be to be in a relaxed state, to be more aware of our present surroundings. It might take traversing some territory to get there.
Yeah.
There's a couple of things that I want to make sure that we touch on. I want to make sure that we touch on co-regulation and that idea that the state that let me just ask you tell me about co-regulation.
Yeah, this concept comes up a ton in the jail that I provide yoga in or facilitate yoga in, especially because on Tuesdays there's 80 men in the room. And so we often will notice right away, like we'll talk about, wow, there's a really high energy in here, or there's a really exhausted energy in here. And we'll often talk about the way someone's mood can affect everybody else in the room. So that's how I've come to best understand and know co-regulation. What's happening in my body can affect what's happening in your body and vice versa. But that also means that if we're among people that are calm and relaxed, we can feel that way too. The way it shows up a lot in our practice is everybody is always able to breathe and move in a way that feels best for them. But I'll offer throughout the practice opportunities for us to sync up. And I'll say, if you want to move together, we can move together. And we'll often move between a few poses in rhythm as one. And that can create this really safe feeling in the room of just knowing what's happening around you. I also will remind them of other spaces where they may have felt co-regulation before. There's a reason why people will sing and sway together in church or at protests. There's a reason why, like, we feel good in the company of a relaxed little kitty. And that has to do with our mirror neurons and things like that. And so that is how I've come to understand, explain, and practice co-regulation.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's such a vital concept, especially when we're in a position, for us, we're facilitating practices inside prisons and jails. That's what we do. For somebody who may be a parole officer, probation officer, they are maybe facilitating an interview with somebody. And so in that, there is a role that we're playing as the facilitator, where if we can remain in a well-regulated state ourselves, it helps the people around us to remain calm. So this process of, oftentimes we talk about self-regulation, and it's wonderful to be able to notice the state that we're in and then apply a tool. And maybe as facilitators, that's very important, that we are able to maintain a well-regulated nervous system state. But then for the clients in our programs, or maybe, our clients as officers or agents, then, they're drawing most likely on our regulation through the process of co-regulation in order to, de-escalate situations rather than allowing them to escalate. Yeah.
If I could add to that, as you said, officers, I think about the way I enter a correctional facility, because it's really easy to feel fear just because it's, you're walking through security, there are armed people, you're not having any of your belongings with you. And so I often just do a physical assessment of how I'm walking in and showing up. And I found the more I greet people with warmth, I ask them about their day, the more I build relationships with not even the folks that are in the room that I'm providing yoga, but just everybody that takes up this community, because that's what it is. You don't think of prison or jail like a
Yeah.
community, but it's a place where people show up and go to work every day. So creating those positive exchanges has really helped. I've regulated my nervous system before I've gone in, but them receiving my like positivity and warmth then gets pushed back on me. They're nice to me, I'm laughing, and then by the
Yeah.
time I'm at my class, I'm calm because I've had all these experiences where we've been able to play off each other's energy and feel a little bit better than one way.
Yeah, and yeah, and I think that there's a lot of, I mean, I'm hearing a lot of active things that you're doing to help build that relationship, but there's something in there that I believe is really important, and that is, that moment that you take to set yourself
Mhm.
and get yourself in your body and find some grounding as you're moving into that space, because I feel like we as human beings pick up on other people's cues. We are sensing at a level below our conscious awareness whether the people that we're with are safe for us, and or whether they're triggered by the environment. So human beings, our hearing is tuned to the sound of birds. You may think that the pitch would be tuned to human speech, but it's not. It's tuned to the sound of birds, because if the birds in our space start to twitter, uh, that's a sign that there may be some sort of threat, some sort of predator in the space. And so we're very aware of our environment through our senses in that way. And I believe that this is happening every single moment that we're in a space, that we're picking up on these unconscious cues. And that's such an important factor. I want to just touch really quick on how, because I believe this is where, that sort of unconscious resonance that's happening between us at a somatic, at an unconscious level, is connected to this idea of vicarious trauma. And it might be helpful to say, well, we have a stress response in order to protect us when we're feeling threatened. Now, what happens when that or that stress response is overwhelmed and we're unable to protect ourselves. This is where we start to experience trauma. And we may have a traumatic experience where that stress response is overwhelmed and ultimately are able to shake it off, or that can become stuck in the body. And we're overwhelmed in a way that we can't re-regulate our nervous system. And so we begin to move through our days as though every moment we're threatening in some way. And this is what we talk about when we're talking about trauma that's held in the body and the long-term work that we're doing with people to help people discharge that energy. So trauma is that fixed state of distress that's something from the past that's still impacting us in the present moment. And I believe that because we are so sensitive to other people's nervous system states, that when we're working with folks that have experienced trauma and trauma is held in their body, that we can pick up on that through an emotional resonance, a somatic resonance. I also know that oftentimes, folks will share with me either the crime that they have committed, and oftentimes it's there's some grievous incidents that I've heard about that create pictures in my mind. I am reimagining an event through that telling, or I'm hearing about the adverse childhood experiences that they had experienced, the abuse, the neglect, etc., that they had experienced leading up to what may have brought them into prison or jail. And my body is reacting to that. So both through my imagining the event and through my feeling their energy, perhaps, as they're telling it, or just the energy that they carry themselves with, it's causing me to come into this state of activation. And when we're exposed to this day after day after day, um, it can have a long-term impact. And I think it's and that's another, key point of this, is using that embodied awareness to start to notice those signs of vicarious trauma so that we can know we need to take effective action to maintain our health and well-being. I'm not sure if you wanted to add
It's
anything else to that.
very, very well said. And I think it brought everything together, so I wouldn't add anything.
Okay. I interviewed Bob Brubaker, who you know, and Bob is a federal parole officer, probation officer. He's going to introduce himself so he can correct his title if I've got it wrong there. And he's a supervisor of other officers, and he's going to talk a little bit about what his experience is on the job. And then I also talked to Priscilla, who is one of our trainers and who is been studying with a woman named Linda Tai, who specializes in a process called somatic experiencing. And she's going to share with us some simple techniques that we have for maintaining regulation in a somatic way. I'm also going to include a video with a short chair yoga practice to go along with this. We have some handouts that cover some key concepts that you can read. I have a checklist for recognizing signs of vicarious trauma, and then written instructions for the practices that Priscilla is going to share, and also we'll include a handout with the chair yoga practice as well. But before we transition, I'm wondering, Nicole, is there something that you would like to share, and maybe even we could do just a quick centering, just to take a moment, and I'd love to hear you guide a little bit of embodied awareness, just as a simple grounding practice.
Absolutely. And I think then what I will do in this moment is slide my chair back because I want to be able to feel my feet on the ground. I often find when I'm in meetings, I'm going to lower it too. There we go. When I'm in meetings, I cross my legs as a more activated stance, ready to listen. So I'm actively right now making an adjustment to settle into my body, which you are welcome to do the same, as well as anybody that is listening to this.
I hear that breath.
Yeah, and it just kind of happened naturally. And I'll invite you to just start taking a moment to feel your feet on the ground. I notice the ground is a bit chilly. I can feel it through my socks. You might be experiencing something different. This can also be the first time you've been asked to feel your feet on the ground. And so also know the absence of sensation is a sensation, right? Just being wary or aware of your experience. Bring your awareness now to your legs. Can you feel the back of your legs as they rest on the chair? And then if you have a chair with a back, can you let your spine rest against that chair? So that the chair is doing the work to hold you. And if you're in a space where there is nothing behind your back, you can take a moment to press your hand to your lower back and see what it feels like to have that support. Notice just in this moment if your shoulders feel any sort of tension, if they're close to your ears, and you might even roll them or scrunch them for a moment. So in the next moment, you can let them soften. You may find as you become aware of your shoulders, you may become aware of tension in your neck and your jaw. And so feel free to take a moment here to maybe roll your head from side to side or any other movement that would create some release and openness for you here. From here, you can bring your neck and your head back to a neutral position. See if you can still feel now your whole body being supported by the chair beneath you. And we'll use these next couple moments to feel our breath and make space for our breath. You can see what it feels like to deepen your inhale. And softly release your exhale on your own time. If it feels okay, see about taking 2 more rounds of breath at your pace. Here, sit up just a bit, letting your body know we're coming out of that relaxation, sending your arms up if that feels okay. And then bringing them back down. So there we go.
I say it every time we do one of these short practices. It always amazes me how quickly my body transitions into a state of relaxation. And honestly, how just simple it is to feel that support, to feel the ground beneath me, to feel my back in the chair. The minute I come into that state, that falling out breath happens almost instantaneously. And even in just a few minutes here, yeah, just such a difference. I really appreciate you taking the time to help me out with this. And yeah, we'll go ahead and transition over and let's talk to Bob Brubaker.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm Bob Brubaker. I'm a supervisory United States probation officer, and I'm with the Fort Wayne Division, Northern District of Indiana, the United States Probation and Pretrial Office. And I have 6 officers that I supervise here. And I've been in the work of probation since 1997. Originally, I was in the adult county probation services here in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And in 2005, I earned a position here with the United States Probation Pretrial Office. And then in 2010, I was promoted to supervisor. And I still, though, take my leadership style is mainly a player coach. We have such a relatively small team here that it's pretty important that I'm able to transition to line work or just be there closely with my officers. Our mission is to assist those individuals ready to change through a host of various reintegrative services, particularly for those coming out of the federal prisons. And in the federal system, you can see a substantial amount of time the individuals would serve prior to coming to us, anywhere on average around 5 or 6, 7 years of imprisonment. And so just reintegrating them is very important, and doing it carefully, compassionately, and effectively, also while protecting the community. So I'm very, very fortunate. I have a very good team of officers here, a very good judge that would handle a lot of the cases here, whether it's on the front end or if they have to go back into court for adjustment to their supervision or even re-imprisonment. I also have strong leadership in this district of ours. Just a great place to work. I'm very, very fortunate, which is incredibly important with this kind of difficult work.
So can you say a little bit more about that? What is it that makes this work challenging?
Generally, the individuals that come to us are individuals that have probably, there's maybe 25% to 30% that have been in and out of arrests or detention, even as juveniles. We do very thorough, detailed pre-sentence reports in which we can see in that 25 to 30% population, arrests starting at, age 15 onward every other year. What one might refer to as somebody that's basically made a career out of crimes. Or we also see in that we do a very careful job at the pre-sentence level of asking their formative years, questions about their formative years. We also speak with family, with husbands, wives, with anybody significant in their life to vet and sort of develop that information a little bit more detailed as to their formative years. And what we're finding with that particular population is a lot of trauma, sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect, not having parental or other familial support, and sometimes that missing piece then being filled by peers that just aren't pro-social, whether it's the gangs or just a lot of problems with that. Normally, let's say, you have parents generally that are involved, that care for you, you have teachers. And so we see a lot of these individuals that just don't have that structural social support.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is one of the perspectives that Prison Yoga Project holds is, that folks don't go down this path because everything has gone right in their lives up to that point, that there is underlying trauma, usually, developmental trauma from, early childhood years that
Yes.
puts them on that course. And one of the reasons why with our facilitators, we're always careful to acknowledge vicarious trauma as a part of the work. And I think beyond just the trauma that somebody may have experienced leading into criminal behavior or substance use, you have the trauma, I think, that comes along with committing a crime or an act of violence, or being in broken relationships, antisocial relationships that when we're witnessing that, we're taking that on to a certain extent,
Yes.
at an unconscious level. Is that something yes. That's
Yes,
something you've
I've
seen.
experienced that early in my career. You get some training, but a lot of that training is just procedural nuts and bolts about the work itself. But you don't get vicarious secondary trauma training. That's not something that's like required, whether it's in your academic. You have to get the bachelor's degree generally for probation officer. Um, Many of us here have master's degrees as well, just given the nature of the dynamic problem solving that we have to bring to the work, and it's a very competitive field of work. But anyway, you don't get that vicarious training. How I went into it was I basically had a really rough day when I was a county probation officer, and I was experiencing these symptoms of like, oh my gosh, am I having a heart attack or what's going on here? And go to the doctor, and doctor's like, well, you're just stressed out. Basically, you're probably having an anxiety attack. And fit person, young person, like what. But that was because I was ignoring and not taking care of my body. Basically, in terms of the trauma I was reading, I was seeing, and I was around, because the individuals that I was supervising as a county probation officer brought a lot of those things that I still see here in federal work and supervision. Is their bodies in a way are traumatized. Those individuals have not generally processed or released that trauma properly. And in fact, what you see, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, is taking that trauma and it leads them to substances, or it also could accelerate or kind of create the seeds for some mental health issues, and even physical health problems, and problems with their people, places, and things. So socialization, again, not so much the pro-social. So we're witnessing that as officers or staff, and that is just absolutely impacting our bodies. A very formative book for me was The Body Keeps the Score. And that, I didn't read that until years later from county work, but thank goodness I came across that. And it just really hit home through case studies and through what that doctor was promoting, which is, hey, our bodies are very, very sensitive systems. They're also awesome, incredibly. What an incredible system, a vessel that allows us to do some tremendously awesome things, but it can also just absorb and soak in trauma. And so finding that truth, and then more importantly, going out and getting techniques for myself first, because it starts with me. Just like if you're on the airplane, that thing unfortunately takes a dive. You get the safety briefing. Hey, grab that mask. Don't put it on your partner, put it on you first. So my process was, coming to terms, checking the ego at the door. I'm not some kind of invincible, when you're young, you think you're Superman. So just admitting that, hey, I need to take care of myself, and then to do it properly through things like meditation, yoga, diet, or just being present and being mindful that these are real things that are impacting my body, and tuning into what am I feeling and where am I feeling it, and then doing something to process and release that. It's very important. That's why the Prison Yoga Project is absolutely a great resource, whether it's information or some of the programming that you all are providing. That is just a great resource.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and this is key, being aware of what you're feeling in your body so that you're able to take effective action with that, and then knowing what to do in order to discharge that energy. And I think this is one of the perspectives that we really emphasize. You mentioned the body keeps the score. That bringing the body into that stress management, it is such an important part, whether it's the awareness or using the body and techniques, from practices like yoga in order to discharge that energy and help re-regulate our nervous systems, is absolutely, essential to long-term health and well-being. Stress is meant to be a very short term,
Yes.
state. It's necessary, part of life, but we move into stress and we move out of stress if we're in
Yes.
chronic stress or if we have stress trapped in the body because
Right.
of trauma. Yeah, it impacts every aspect of our lives from the body on up through our relationships.
And Bill, if I may add, it was also a moment where I just had this realization that in sort of doing an inventory of my own trauma, okay,
Mm,
and the things that just what life can present you. I'm a veteran.
mm,
Um, I've been in serious long-term relationships that haven't always worked out, or I've had parents that aren't perfect, on and on, family things, and when I started down this course of self-care, I had to finally process those again, but from this frame and foundation of technique that's very healthy and clearing and releasing, whether it's the yoga, the meditation, the diet, just taking care of yourself. And that was also, so that occurring a little, whether it was in my late 20s, early 30s, 40s, and still going on to this day. That's not something I think as a culture of probation officers or law enforcement officers that we, talk about as in a group of us, because we're all, we're warriors, if you will, and we need to be strong, and we need to protect the community, and just, have that presence and presentation that we're perfect, if you will, or we're above that, or somehow we're immune to that. And I'm just, I'm kind of going out there, sticking myself out here, and just saying, hey, we're all humans, and we've all been through probably some form of trauma. And like anybody, like a lot of people, probably, I did band-aids. I don't want to speak for a lot of people. I'm just saying I did some band-aids along the way, and it worked. But that stuff can kind of stay there and wait on
mm.
something else that comes along, and then it can really turn into an infection of sorts, okay, or just a dis-ease that sort of really ripples out even into the work, whether you realize it or not. So once I started unpacking that, taking care of that, I just noticed a lot of very big positive things come out of that and ripple out forward. Also, I will say it's also important who we're working with, and how they're processing trauma. And particularly as a leader, trying to be an example of and provide options for healthy ways to process trauma, to be aware of trauma, to learn more about trauma, and to do it in a welcoming, gentle way of invites and options, and just placing options in front of your officers to let them decide when, where, and how. But as a leader, I want that in front of them and around them. And I also want to show through my actions, hey, uh, we can process trauma the right way. We can deal with high stress situations without uh, uh, elevating that, or adding to that in a poor way.
That's a really good point. That the when you have processed your own trauma or managing your own stress effectively, you're inevitably going to be more effective in your role because you're going to be able to de-escalate situations rather than having situations escalating because you might be bringing something in yourself. Yeah, wonderful.
Yes.
Yeah. I think overall, one of the things that we have really been leaning into is a shift towards healing as the modality, and understanding that a lot of that begins with staff, because they help to shape the environment of whether the work that you're doing or when we're working in prisons and jails, the deputies, the correctional officers that are there really have such an impact on shaping the tone. And ultimately, if we can create a more healing centered environment, I think it's healthier for everybody and we get more effective outcomes ultimately.
100%. I'm one of the, I count myself as very, very fortunate very grateful that I can say I can't wait to get to my work, my purpose. It's definitely my work is very purposeful. It's very important. It's stressful, but again, there are options for us to navigate and to heal or to release that stress, and to also learn from that. Stress is essentially some sort of life lesson, potentially for us all. It can be a connector, and yes, it doesn't mean we have to. Stress does cause our system to do some things that probably aren't bad, like alert us a little bit more,
Hmm.
maybe engage some physicality if it's needed.
Hmm.
But at the same time, again, it's just managing that to the appropriate proportionate level to the situation. Um, but yeah, I love my job. I mean, not a whole lot of people can say that. I enjoy working with the people that I'm around. Even obviously, this is part of my work as well, as being able
Yeah.
to talk to leaders such as yourself that are involved in these programs and trainings and services to our community, particularly a community that I feel is in some ways discarded, or is, sort of treated as warehoused, want to forget about. But I believe that's changing for the good. I do. It's gradual, slow, but there are changes in sentencing, less severe
Hmm.
imprisonment terms, more and more community options. And I'm very fortunate to be in a community where the non-for-profit community and even the business community here is very open to working with individuals released from prison. So that's another good, positive cultural sign or climate here.
This hits so much of what the message that I really want people to hear,
Oh,
and
good.
I love having these conversations with you. Um,
Same here, Bill.
yeah, is there more? Are there more things? And so the audience for this are
Sure.
probation and parole officers, and so are there some just words of wisdom or advice on getting started and
Yep.
what to look out for?
Thank you, Bill. I think it starts with just placing yourself in front of trainings such as this, or around people like ourselves that are committed towards understanding trauma, secondary trauma, and then more importantly, just doing some healthy things about that and sharing that. Opening invites and participation into yoga, meditation. A lot of organizations within criminal justice, it's starting to change a little bit. I'm hearing a little bit more about yoga and meditation. I know my team and I here in this district, we're very proactive about that. We've had meditation facilitators come in. We've had yoga instructors come in. We've also, as a district, our chief and deputy chief and the leadership team, and really the whole staff has embraced what has started to happen nationally in the federal probation and pretrial system, is invites to meditation pods or groups that will pop up once or twice during the week, that you can use Microsoft Teams
Mm.
or any other virtual platform and participate in for as little as anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes. And they do things in there such as a light guided meditation. They'll do things in there like tapping, just somatic things. And this is only the beginning. They're also starting to offer more robust trainings and seminars, and uh, involving mindfulness. I myself went through a mindfulness-based stress reduction
Yep.
certification online. There's so many great providers and vendors for that. Depending on your organization, you could approach your leadership and see if you could get some financial assistance with that, if that's available, or if not, you would at least bring it to their attention that, hey, I'm interested in that. I myself have also reached out to my brothers and sisters in the county probation departments, and have invited them into these trainings where it's available, that I can open it up. A few months ago, I invited them into a yoga studio. Our esteemed colleague Betsy
Oh yeah.
helped me
Uh-huh.
with that, and I invited probably around 20-25 showed up. County and federal probation officers came into a yoga studio together, and Betsy did a terrific job of guiding us through some really good, helpful movements and breathing. And again, we're all together. We're in some tough work, but we're doing something healthy about it. And there's some camaraderie, fellowship there that's just very healing and comforting. And that's what we need as staff in this very tough work. Heck, we all need it, whether we want to admit it or not. I think it does us all good.
I think too, you remind me of something that I feel like is so important, because a lot of times uh, uh, people think that the yoga or mindfulness in and of itself is something, that's magic, and that this is what I do, and if I just do these practices, then everything's going to be fine. But when we come together in a group, what we're doing, being together as a group in a state of nervous system regulation, we begin co-regulating. And this is when I think the parts of ourselves that are about connection and supporting one another and about community come online,
Yes.
and it creates a sense of belonging. And
Yes.
it's that sense of belonging and togetherness that is the thing that heals, I think, the isolation that can come along with trauma and stress. And it's happening in a way that feels very safe, because we're not necessarily having to share something in a very vulnerable way. We are
Yes.
just together, relaxed, alert,
Yes.
connected, and that in and of itself is really where the healing takes place, and where we build resiliency. So
I,
thank you. Thank you so much for
oh, you're
making those
welcome.
opportunities available to the
Yes.
community.
No. And I want to say this, that when I say yoga and meditation, sometimes we can pop in our head
Right.
images
Yeah.
of this very intense dose or experience, and I'm not very flexible, but
Yep.
it's slowly changing for the better. But there's modified positions. There's basic, very easy yoga light movements. You can always do what you can do is the best, what the best instructors say, and that's how Betsy is. And meditation's the same. It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be, the first sitting doesn't have to be a half hour. It can be as little as 5 minutes. But look, the other thing is, I would say, is if you can grab a partner with you, it's always better to
Mm-hmm.
have a friend go with you. And there's so many free, wonderful options out there, even online. And I mentioned yoga and meditation, but I would say, if you have something else, if there's something deeply powerful to you, that's fine too. And also, just another plug for taking care of yourself physically.
Mm-hmm.
The nutrition, the rest. What's your s- slowing your day down to say, hey, how does my body feel right now? What's going
Yeah.
on inside of my body? And just slowly starting to have that conversation with yourself. And then maybe, just if you haven't been to your doctors in a while, hey, go see your family physician, get a checkup, exercise, just drink water, move. It's been an hour, get up, move around.
Yeah.
Really good basic things, but they're all very important. And I just wish everybody the best on that journey of self-discovery and self-care, really, because it's just a wonderful thing, and it can be yours forever, basically. It's right there. It's very organic too. It doesn't require. It really doesn't even require a membership fee, if you will. There are ways to do this at no cost.
Yeah.
Really, truly.
Yeah, and I think you make a really good point there, that there's so many different ways that we can practice this and being in tune with our body, and it doesn't have to be something that's elaborate or complex. In fact, I would say that the simpler it is, the better. If you're out walking,
Yes,
paying attention to the sensations in your legs and your feet, especially if you find yourself caught up in your head, just ruminating about something, bring yourself back down into the body for a few minutes, and then see how that feels,
it's
because there's a
wonderful.
momentum that gets behind when you're feeling good, and you can identify what it is that helped you get there. Then you build on that, and it's an ever escalating, uh well, sometimes there's a little up and down, but
Yeah.
generally the trajectory is towards feeling better and better. At least
Yes.
that's my experience. So
Mine too. Mine
yeah.
too.
let's go ahead. Let's leave it there. Thank you
Sure.
so much. Once again, man,
Thank
that
you,
was,
Bill.
it's wonderful to be with you and to chat with you. And gosh, I can't wait to get down and edit this and present it out there to the world,
Yeah,
because you're such an important voice in this, Bob. And if
thank
we
you.
haven't already had you on for a webinar, we should have you on for a webinar as
Please,
well.
I'm honored. I'm privileged to be with you again, Bill. It's always good to be with you. And
Yeah.
thank you for the work you and your folks are doing.
Thank
Very
you.
appreciative for that. So
Thank you. All right. Well, I wanted to invite my friend and colleague Priscilla here today to guide us through some simple somatic practices for managing stress and for working with trauma. And Priscilla, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Thank you for having me, Bill. It's an honor to be invited. My name is Priscilla. My pronouns are she, her. I am coming to you from Los Angeles, which is the native people's lands of Shumash. And I am a trainer with Prison Yoga Project, as well as the training operations manager. Well, I'm here to share some somatic tools that are very accessible, I hope. I'll try to make them as accessible as possible that can be used in any situation. I use these tools very regularly when I'm feeling stressed in traffic, overwhelmed at work, or, just anytime I'm feeling an activation, I try to pause and use these tools. When I'm activated, when I'm in a trauma response, anxious, whatever it may be, it's really hard to find and be aware of the tools, because I'm now getting closer to a state of fight and flight. My priorities have changed to fight or flight. And so if I have the muscle memory of these tools, they're a little more accessible when I'm outside of my window of capacity.
I think that's a really good point, and it's something that I bring into the sessions that I guide in prison, that we're here in this space now, practicing in a relatively safe environment so that we can become good at and skilled and create that muscle memory, as you say, for when we really need it. So that if we're moving towards a fight flight response, we've already conditioned ourselves. We're not going to only apply these tools in crisis situations, but we practice so that when the crisis situation comes, we're ready for it.
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I'll let you take it away.
So the first practice I wanted to share is orienting, and that is orienting to your space. So if you'd like to join me, you can allow your eyes to kind of drift around your space, the room that you're in, the space that you're in, looking around and taking in your surroundings and taking it in more of a curious way versus noticing, oh, that's something I need to do, that's something I need to take care of later. So just looking around your space and just noticing textures and colors, maybe looking up above you, the space behind you in one way, the space below you, and behind you in the other way. And as you make your way around your space, noticing all the things around you, notice maybe if you have a window, or notice where your exits are, and notice the space between you and the exit, your exit path. As you continue to look and take in your space, you may notice your body wanting to do something. My body wanted to let a sigh out. My shoulders are a little more dropped. And the intention with that is to let your body and your nervous system know that you are here in this moment in a place of relative safety. And the intention behind that is when there's a trauma response or something like PTSD, your nervous system can go back to when the event happened, back to a different time, to a different space. And that, can come with feeling stressed and anxious and all the other things, or a fawn response. And so this orienting practice is to kind of set that foundation. I'm here, I'm in my space. I know where my exits are. I know where they are, kind of mentally, but visually and feeling in my body. I know what this route to my exit is like, and I'm in my space. So kind of just setting that tone right off the bat. And the next practice I wanted to share is tapping. So it's what it sounds like, just tapping, and you can start on your chest, and you can do a whole hand, fingertips, different pressures, different speeds. This is possibly my favorite practice that I use the most. So a sigh already happened. And then you can bring your hands maybe up closer to your collarbone, maybe up to your cheekbones and your temples. Or if you feel called to go to a different location on your body, follow that as well. Maybe leading up to the top of your head. I tend to hold a lot of tension around where I hold my glasses, so I could feel the muscles in my face asking for some tapping. And in between my eyebrows. And we can bring the tapping to the sides of our heads to make our way down. And if you feel called to do anything, maybe if you have some tense muscles in your shoulders or your neck, giving yourself a little squeeze. And then moving our tapping. You can switch over sides to reach both arms, tapping down your arms. And moving back up. And back to our chest, and moving down your torso. And giving your legs some tapping on your knees. And maybe see if you notice. I noticed when I was first tapping that my favorite place to tap was right here, right at the top of my chest. And maybe you find your favorite place, the place that feels the most supportive. And as you continue to explore tapping, the intention for this is to bring yourself back to your body, back to this moment. As I mentioned, when a trauma response happens, when stress and anxiety, that you can be taken either to a place in the past or in the future, being anxious about something coming up, and bringing this tapping in, connecting with your body, and that motion can be supportive to bring you back into your body, back into this moment. Because in this moment, when we're feeling present, we can have feel a little more settled and a little more organized. Because when I'm worried about things in the past or the future, my to-do list is not in order. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do next. But when I'm here and I'm present and in my body, hopefully everything feels a little more clear.
It stands out to me, I notice sometimes people tapping in an unconscious way. I think it's often common. You'll see people who are nervous, they're maybe bouncing a leg, or they're tapping one hand or the other. And I think the difference is, it strikes me that this is a natural response for discharging nervous energy when we're feeling it. And that what we're doing with practice of tapping as you say, consciously engaging in it and then being aware of the sensation, bringing us back into our body, that sensation being grounded in the present moment. It is combining the mindfulness with something that is naturally discharge practice
Yeah.
for us as humans. So brilliant.
Yeah. And thank you for bringing that up because, there's like a nervous energy, someone's tapping on the table, bouncing their knee. And it just makes me bring in that, I'm doing this on purpose, intentionally, and I'm kind of changing those wires in my brain. I'm feeling activated. I want to do something to, see what that's about. And I'm going to bring myself in. I'm bringing my own tools in intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also makes me feel like if I were working with a client in a one-on-one situation and I saw somebody doing that, um, bouncing a leg or something like that, that this may be a really great starting point to introduce these practices to another person to maybe just reflect that back to them. It's like, I noticed that you're tapping your hand on your leg as we're talking. And, person might say, oh, yeah, I do that. And it's like, well, let's do that for a minute. And instead of doing it unconsciously, pay attention to the sensation that you're feeling as you're tapping your hand. And then maybe noticing or inviting some reflection around, as we've been doing this consciously, do you feel a change in your nervous energy? Do you feel maybe more relaxed? So a great way to possibly introduce this in a simple and natural way to a potential client.
Yeah, I absolutely love that because I think, certain things can feel like if someone has noticed, oh, I noticed you're tapping a lot. I feel like there could be a level of shame, like, oh, sorry, like, never
Yeah,
mind.
I couldn't do that.
If I'm wearing my earrings and I'm getting nervous, I tend to like dangle with it, play with it. And I can see that being perhaps a point of shame. Oh, somebody noticed that I'm anxious and I have shame about being anxious. But bringing that in, like, let's do that together. That's something your body's calling you to do. You're doing it. Let's bring in the mindfulness and see what's going on there.
Yeah. Yeah, destigmatizing the and using it as a point of awareness for understanding your current state of regulation
Yeah.
is a tool rather than a source of shame, and normalizing it as something that like we have all kinds of indicators that we might be feeling a little stressed in a situation.
Yeah.
That we can start to pay attention to. Okay, you had another practice or two that you wanted to share with me today.
Yeah. I wanted to share self-massage and havening touch. So we can bring our hands together and just begin to massage maybe the underside of the knuckles, putting as much or as little pressure with your thumb as you'd like. And just exploring your palm with your thumb. Maybe bringing in some movement of the wrist. Then you can bring a little pressure on your pinky, squeezing with your other hand. And going down your fingers. We may not be in a space where you can tap your head. Maybe you're in a meeting or just somewhere. And I love this option because this can be done under your desk. It can be done at a red light. And then moving over to your other hand. And exploring, do I like a lot of pressure? Am I wanting to just kind of caress? Is there a part of my hand that I notice different sensation. I'm just moving through, exploring. What does this feel like? Does anything come up for me? And moving down your fingers on the other hand. And if a sigh or anything comes out that is welcomed, what comes up for me is that I don't do this enough. I type a lot. I use my hands for everything, cooking food, cleaning. And I'd like to spend some more time appreciating my hands, giving them some appreciation. And then I wanted to bring in havening touch as well, which is a bit of a caress. So you can begin by just moving your hand in a circle on your chest. This is also one of my favorites that I pair with tapping. Then you can bring both hands to your shoulders and start to just caress down your arms. Again, bringing in this intentional touch to bring myself back into my body, bring myself to this moment. And I'm doing pretty slow movements. I'm moving my arms down, my hands down from my shoulders to my elbows. And I notice that my breath wants to slow down with the slow movement. Perhaps bringing in some self-massage by squeezing my arms. I also recommend this tool, if you're feeling like you're going too fast. For me, that's when I'm feeling anxious. I'm mentally going too fast. And just bringing in these slow movements of intentional, it feels like gratitude. I'm giving gratitude to my body. Soft caresses and some squeezes, some hugs. I notice just in our practice right now that I'm feeling slower, feeling more connected with myself.
And again, I think this is another one of those things that um, comes naturally to us. And then when we bring the mindfulness aspect to it, it just enhances the effectiveness of the practice. And I was noticing that as I was massaging my forearms, again, I also spend a lot of my day on the computer typing, and in massaging my forearms, I noticed that there's like a certain amount of activation or effort that is just living in there.
Mm-hmm.
And as I began to squeeze my forearms and notice what was happening, uh, it felt natural to release that effort and to soften those muscles. Uh, the awareness that touch brought to me naturally led me to uh, releasing effort that
Mm-hmm.
wasn't necessary, which of course then starts to slow the whole system down. And I notice too that as you're doing this and as I'm doing this, that we often are spontaneously exhaling and sighing out the breath. And
Yeah.
I know that you wanted to introduce one more practice
Yeah.
around breathing.
Yeah. So I wanted to offer a breath where we do a deep inhale that can be in your nose or your mouth. and exhale with a hum. So inhaling deeply. You can go a couple rounds at your own pace, inhaling deeply and humming out the exhale. I feel called to bring my hand to my chest as I can feel the vibrations in my chest. You can continue at your own pace. There's no right or wrong hum or tone or style that needs to happen. Just following what your body wants to do in this space. And the intention with this is a longer exhale. And these tools probably go best when you're in an activated state, going closer to fight and flight and trying to bring yourself back into the moment. And bringing in that longer exhale can support slowing down your heart rate because it's bringing on the parasympathetic nervous system. And that is the part of our nervous system that is the rest and digest. As we inhale, we activate the sympathetic nervous system. And that's, getting our heart rate up. Parasympathetic brings it down. So as we breathe all day long, we're kind of going through this motion. And when we're in an activated state, that can spike. So bringing in the longer exhale, kind of trying to bring yourself back down. Practices that I shared today are the practices that I use most, practices that feel most supportive for me. And, everyone's different, everyone's unique. And so I would recommend trying out different practices and seeing if other ones land with you in a specific way. If these landed with you, fantastic. See if you can, bringing them in. I try to practice them when I'm at my desk or when I'm waiting for the washer machine, just throughout my day, try to recall, I have a free moment. Let me bring this back online just so that when I need it, it's close.
Yeah. Can you say also just a little bit about how, when we were talking initially, before we got started with the recording, you were sharing with me what friends of yours were saying?
Yeah, I was saying that I'm so grateful for this work, for PYP, for the opportunities to learn about somatic experiencing, to learn about another big one for me is internal family systems, a therapeutic modality that I have really practiced a lot over the past. I've been with PYP for 3 years, and friends lately that I share about this with, I share about this with anyone that I can, because I feel like for me, it has changed so much. I've grown and learned how to be with myself in a more supportive way. And so friends lately have been texting me and saying that they've noticed my journey, how much I've changed and how much I've grown, and that I have been inspiring them to do this work as well. I have a lot of talks with them, sharing the new things that I've learned and giving them experiences that I've had, just to kind of explain this, because it can feel a little, if I'm just talking about what it is, it's very heady. It's very intellectualized. But then bringing in the actual experiences where I brought in my feelings, I brought in somatics, I had the experiences that I needed physically. I believe that's where the magic is. And so they've been letting me know that I'm inspiring them to get on their journey of healing as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And yeah, it's wonderful to work with you and to get to have the conversations that we do. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.